So for years I've always wanted to build a kit car. It didn't really matter what type of kit car it was more for the building project, the engineering project, more than the having a sports car to drive at the end of it. And even on one occasion I did make a start on building the sports car from the Haynes Build Your Own Sports Car on a budget book, but for one reason or another I never completed it. It may have been that I never had a garage to build it in, and then when I did have space, a garage to build it in, I never had the money to complete it. And now I don't have the garage to build a kit car in. I've probably got the money. The other thing was, I found a video on YouTube of a gentleman in the US who had built a miniature 4-cylinder 4-stroke engine, which is the type of engine used in these kit cars. I got in touch with that gent. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. As I say, I got in touch with him and I bought a copy of the plans off him, the drawings to make that 4-cylinder engine. Now the engine is only 4.5 inches long along the length of the block, and I fancied making the engine. That's the reason why I bought the drawings. But I thought it'd be a cool idea if I could also put that small engine in some sort of vehicle, in a car, make it do something. And that's when I got the idea to build a kit car. I've got this book which contains all the plans on the chassis on how to build it, and I thought, what if I scaled down the plans for the chassis to match the plans, to match the size of the engine that I had a drawing for. So that's what I've done. I've done a bit of modelling on SketchUp, and I've reproduced the drawings in that book to create a scaled down version of the chassis design. I've bought some 6mm square steel bar which I'm going to use to make the space frame chassis. So in this video that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut some steel, we're going to weld it up, we're going to build the chassis, and then this is going to be an ongoing series. Could take us a while because I'm still learning how to use my milling machine and lathe effectively, so I might do a video every month, but I'm going to have to, as I say, I've got the engine to build. I'm going to have to come up with some sort of clutch arrangement and gearbox that will sit in this part of the chassis. There'll be a prop shaft that will run through the middle, and then I'll have to create some sort of differential drive shaft suspension to create. I've even thought about creating some sort of braking system. There'll be bodywork to produce, and also I'm going to have to work out how RC electronics work, how I can set up some servos to control the throttle, the brakes, maybe the clutch, I'm not sure yet. Maybe the clutch will be automatic. Yeah, so in this video we'll get on with this and we'll see how it turns out. So I've drew out the chassis on this bit of 18mm board, and the idea of that is just so I've got a flat surface to keep this chassis as flat as possible. And I've drew out the base frame. There's different parts going to sit above this base frame, but this is just to get me started so that I know the base is laid out correctly and I've got my foundation right. As you can see, I've cut all the steel for the base frame. I just need to prep some of the ends. I've cut these parts using just a cutting disc and a grinder. I'm going to prep the ends with the angles where they need it and take the burrs off just using a bench grinder, and then we'll get this base frame welded up. So at the moment I've got the main body of the chassis welded up. There's just a couple of diagonals going there to put some suspension brackets on. Still need to weld up the frame that goes round the prop and the gearbox area down the centre of here. On the full size car, this is where you would have sat, in these two sides, and at the moment I'm just welding up the frame for where the diff sits in here. I've just noticed a major error. I've just removed these two parts out of here. These actually want to be longer and they want to come to the underside of that cross member, so I'm going to cut some longer parts and just weld them in there. So for the back end here, there's two curved bits of round bar I need to weld on. I've just got a pipe bender for brake line, and that's what I'm going to use to bend the round bar. Now, it can be a difficult thing to judge where to bend from. What I've done is I've put a mark on the round bar, which I'm going to use to set the round bar at the 0 position on the pipe bender, and then I'm just going to measure from that mark around the radius afterwards. So I've got a line on the bench which I'm going to place under the centre of the round bar on that leg. Just make sure it's square. And then I'm just going to measure from the mark I put on before to that line, which is 22mm. So what that means is I need to mark the next point of the bend at the distance I want the legs to be apart, less 42mm, so 22 each end. So what I want is, I want the outside of this U shape to be 246mm. I'm going to minus 6mm for the diameter, half a diameter at each end, which is 240. Then I'm going to minus 44 for the radius at each end, so that is 196. So I'll put a mark from the last mark at 196 and we'll see how it works out. Hopefully it should be right. So I said I wanted the centre to centre dimension to be 240mm. I'll just see if I've got that. No, I'm out, batty. I know the problem. So I should have bent it round this way. So what I'm going to do is, now I know, I'm going to do that again. I can measure from that mark this way. Again, 196. So the mistake I made there is I should have bent round to the left from this mark here. Instead I went round to the right, which has took off 22mm. So I'll try again. So the centres was 196. So I'll just put that mark right round the pipe, right round the bar, sorry. So I'm going to turn it this way. Put the bar in at 0. Let's try again. So I want the centre to centre to be 240mm. Slightly over, but I think that's because it's not quite square. Just going to bring it past 90 slightly. And the same on this other end. Just bring it just past 90 to let's measure it now. There we go. I'm about a mil out, so I'm going to live with that. I'll cut these leg lengths now to the length I need and we'll get it welded on the chassis. So the back end's finished now, apart from the suspension brackets, which I'm going to weld on last. So now I'm going to work on the prop tunnel, where the prop shaft will run in the future. So there's just a bit of a tunnel to form down the centre over here and up to where the dashboard would be in front of the engine bay, so I'll get that welded in now. So it's the next morning, so I'm going to spend this morning just getting the small brackets made. So I've just been folding these around a bit of high speed cutting steel in the vise. So I've got 20 of these to fold, and then after that we'll be drilling through them with a 3mm hole, which will be what the suspension arms bolt to in the future. So I'm just marking out the position for the last suspension brackets, which will hold the top ends of the shock absorbers on the back. So I'm just going to mark centre and then mark out each way. and you just saw me welding up the brackets for this last bit. So we'll get them welded on, we'll get the chassis spray painted, and then that'll be the chassis finished for now. So I've got the chassis finished now. All I'm going to do now is spray paint the chassis just to prevent any rust. I'm going to use this zinc 182 primer. I use this for everything. It's a zinc based primer, and I'll stick a link in the description to where you can get hold of this. So we'll get it sprayed up. So there we have it, the chassis is finished. Now welding isn't anywhere near perfect. I probably didn't need to tell you that, but it's strong enough that it's not going to fall apart. The materials I've used for this is 6x6 square bar for the main chassis. I've used 10mm by 1mm flat bar for the suspension brackets, and then 6mm round bar for those curved pieces on the back of the chassis. So in the next video I've already got my materials ready for the suspension brackets. I've got some 80mm flat bar aluminium, which will be the suspension wishbones. So that's what we'll be making in the next video. I've also got a slightly thicker 40x20 aluminium bar, and I'll be using them to make the uprights on the front and the back that'll carry the wheels. But I've also bought a lump of 7000 series aluminium, which is what's going to form the engine block. So in the coming videos we'll be making that as well. So please subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and like this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, stay tuned, and see you again next time.